I stepped into the banquet hall feeling the weight of a dozen judgmental eyes. Every laugh, whisper, and sideways glance felt like an accusation. The air was scented with stale wine and roses, heavy with the kind of forced cheerfulness you only find at corporate-sponsored celebrations. Tonight was supposed to be Dad's night. 40 years of early mornings, late nights, missed birthdays, and one extra long career in the same company that had practically raised him. But instead of the pride I'd expected, I felt the sting of being labeled the family disappointment. My name is Celeste Marlowe. Not a name you'd hear every day. Thankfully, my parents always said it suited someone who marched to their own drum. But as I stood near the edge of the room, clutching my uneventful career in my palm like a single wilted petal, I realized I was the only drum left out of sync. My father, Richard Marlowe, had risen from mailroom clerk to division vice president, so the program said, and tonight's polished presentation would end with the executive director praising his loyalty and drive. Dad would soak it in. He deserved it. What he didn't deserve was that look he gave me, the one that said, "I wish you were more like me." I spotted the makeshift stage at the far end, black drapes, a lectern with the company logo, and a gleaming plaque for Dad to unveil. Around me, colleagues and their spouses mingled in clusters. They congratulated him on decades of service. They asked me what I did for a living, and when I gave my usual vague answer, freelance writer, part-time tutor, exploring a few options, they offered sympathetic smiles before turning away. I tried to laugh it off, but the words family disappointment echoed behind my eyes, each echo louder than the last. Ever since graduation, I'd pursued writing stories that mattered. Profiles of teachers who'd changed lives, narratives from survivors who found hope in hardship. I'd carved out a modest but honest life, chasing a passion instead of a paycheck. But here, where success was measured by titles and salaries, my lifestyle was a punchline. I drifted toward the refreshment table. Someone had carelessly dripped red wine onto the white linen. Typical, I murmured under my breath. Dad would never spill. He was precise, methodical. He kept everything in order. My crooked grin faded when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Aunt Marybeth, hair coiffed into a perfect swirl, and a pearl necklace, matching the one she gave every holiday season. She peered at me through cat-eye glasses and exclaimed with false cheer, "Oh, Celeste, darling, I couldn't see you out there. Where have you been hiding?" "Just around," I said, hoping my voice sounded lighter than it felt. "I'm sure you're very busy," she said, patting my arm as if I was still 7, and she was fussing over my scraped knee. "Your father is so proud. Isn't your father wonderful? Why don't you go up and say something about all he's accomplished? Maybe you haven't thought about your speech yet?" Aunt Marybeth beamed, as if my unspoken failure were a charming quirk. I managed a small smile. "No speech," I said. "Tonight is his night. I'm here to celebrate him." Then I retreated further into the throng. I found my mother Karen, near a cluster of HR executives. She smiled tightly, her eyes darting between Dad and me, as if I were a live wire she couldn't control. "Sweetheart, why don't you help me hand out the commemorative programs?" she suggested, stack of glossy pamphlets in hand. "People will be looking for them soon." As I handed out programs, I overheard snippets. "So what does Celeste do now? Is she still writing that blog of hers? I heard she's moving abroad next month. So adventurous." Adventurous. My choice of word. They thought I was drifting around the world, free and untethered, when the truth was I'd saved enough to afford 2 more months in a cramped flat, and only until I landed my next assignment. But I smiled and nodded. "Yes, London," I lied. Anything to fit their mental image of me as the wandering dreamer, not the struggling artist. Dad took the stage shortly after, flanked by 2 HR executives, whose name tags gleamed in the overhead lights, Jessica Patel and Mark Henderson. Jessica's tone was warm, professional. She spoke of Dad's contributions, his integrity, his willingness to mentor younger colleagues. Mark handed Dad a framed certificate. Dad's voice shook ever so slightly when he spoke, gratitude and emotion lacing every word. I watched from the sidelines, heart swelling with pride, even as shame gnawed at my bones. When the applause thundered, I clapped hardest, but my hands stung at how hollow the gesture felt. ... The formalities ended, and hors d'oeuvre reappeared. I retreated to the balcony doors, craving fresh air. Outside, the humid evening settled over the company's terrace, fairy lights twinkling like distant stars. I leaned against the railing, palms pressed to the cool metal, taking deep breaths. Celia? A voice called softly behind me. I turned. Jessica Patel stepped out, folding her arms. Mind if I join you? Of course not, I said, stepping aside. She studied me for a moment. I wanted to find you before the night ended. She held something behind her back. Your father speaks very highly of you, you know. I let out a hollow laugh. You hear that often? More than you think. She presented me with a small card, heavy cardstock, embossed logo of the company. I'd like to talk about a position, she said. Something flexible, project-based. I think your writing skills could help with our internal communications, annual reports, newsletters, training modules. My breath caught. The implication, HR had arrived not just for celebration, but to offer me an opportunity, but I hesitated. If I accepted, I'd step into the same world Dad had, cubicles, memos, structured hours. Stability at the cost of my freedom. Stability at the cost of my identity. Before I could respond, the banquet doors swung open behind us. I felt a collective shift as footsteps crossed the threshold. I turned slowly. And there in the doorway stood the HR director, tall, imposing, surrounded by a small retinue. Jessica's shoulders stiffened. I knew that look. HR had arrived. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The moment the HR director stepped out onto the terrace, the air thickened, like the night had forgotten how to breathe. I stood frozen beside Jessica, my father's laugh echoing faintly from inside the banquet hall. The director, Robert Kingsley, if I remembered the name from the event program, cut through the small talk like a knife through cake, his eyes sharp and assessing as they fell on me. Celeste Marlowe, he asked, though his voice made it sound more like an announcement than a question. Jessica shifted uncomfortably, her hands clasped at her waist. Robert, I was just talking with Celeste about. He raised a hand to silence her, gaze locked on me. May I speak with you privately? There was no room for argument. The casual warmth of the party fell away. Jessica offered me an apologetic shrug as Kingsley gestured for me to follow him inside. We wove through the clusters of well-dressed colleagues, their laughter turning into curious murmurs as we passed. Dad spotted us, glass in hand, confusion flickering over his face before he smiled politely at Robert. Kingsley, I didn't expect you to make it tonight. Richard, Robert said, all professional smoothness, I wouldn't miss this for the world. Do you mind if I borrow Celeste for a moment? Dad's eyes darted to me, 1,000 questions hanging unspoken. I gave him a stiff smile. It's fine, Dad, I'll be right back. Kingsley led me down a hallway off the main ballroom, dark wood panels, muted art on the walls, the steady hum of a distant ice machine the only sound. He stopped by an empty conference room, pushed the door open, and waited for me to enter first. I stepped inside, heart pounding. The room smelled like stale coffee and copier paper. He shut the door behind us. Do you know why I wanted to speak with you? He asked, leaning against the table, arms folded. I have no idea, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He regarded me for a moment, then pulled a thin folder from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. We've been monitoring the internal communications channels. There's been a breach, confidential project details leaked to an external blog. My stomach dropped. What does that have to do with me? You run a personal blog, don't you? He asked, the question barbed. A public one, I said, heat rising in my cheeks. I write human interest stories, nothing about Dad's work. He opened the folder, revealing screenshots. Then maybe you can explain this. He turned the pages. Quotes from anonymous sources. References to management restructuring, budget cuts. Internal memos turned inside out for public consumption. I felt my legs weaken. I didn't write these, I said, panic bubbling up. I swear I'd never betray my father's trust like that. He studied me. We know you didn't leak them directly, but someone used your byline, someone with access. That puts you in the middle. I backed away from the table, my shoulder hitting the wall. So what happens now? Kingsley's eyes narrowed. Now, we ask for your cooperation. We need the original source. Whoever fed you this information is trying to sabotage this company, and your father's legacy is on the line. A cold realization seeped into my bones. This wasn't just about me. It was about Dad. His retirement, his spotless record, his pride. I don't know who sent it, I whispered. My blog has open submissions. I vet them, but people use fake names, VPNs. It could be anyone. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. We're hoping you'll help us find out. Jessica believed you could be an asset. I need to know that you are. He snapped the folder shut. Otherwise, this conversation won't end here. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded, though the dread coiled tighter around my ribs. Okay. I'll help. He leaned closer, voice dropping low. Good. Then we'll make this go away. Quietly. No need to drag your father into it tonight. He checked his watch, then turned for the door. You'll hear from Jessica tomorrow. He left me in that cold conference room, the folder a dark stain on the table. My mind spun with questions I had no answers for. Who would do this? Why me? And how could I protect my father from a scandal I hadn't even seen coming? I slipped back into the banquet hall just as Dad was finishing another round of backslapping congratulations. His eyes found mine across the room. Hopeful, searching. I forced my mouth into a smile, but my pulse thudded in my ears. As I approached, Aunt Maribeth swooped in, champagne flute in hand. Celeste, darling? Where have you been hiding now? You know everyone's been looking for you. I looked at Dad. I'm right here, I said. But my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Maribeth cackled, leaning close enough for her perfume to sting my eyes. You always were the little mystery, weren't you? Before I could answer, Jessica reappeared at my side, her smile polite but strained. We should talk again, she said quietly. There's more you need to see. The music swelled. Dad raised his glass for a final toast. The applause erupted around me, but I felt like I was underwater, adrift, watching the lights blur and warp. My father's pride, my name, my future, they all felt like they were slipping through my fingers. I lifted my glass. To Dad, I murmured, but my mind was already racing ahead, desperate for a way out of the web tightening around me. This was only the beginning. And I knew deep in my bones that someone in that room wanted to see me fall. When the last toast ended and the hall emptied of the polite clinks and forced laughter, I stayed behind. Dad lingered near the stage, shaking hands with a few stragglers who'd overstayed their welcome. I watched him, the proud curve of his shoulders, the way he slipped into his practiced grin like an old suit. Part of me wanted to rush over to tell him everything, about Kingsley's accusations, about the folder still seared into my memory. But another part, the more rational part, knew it would break him. And tonight wasn't about breaking him. I slipped out into the night air, the moon hanging low and swollen like an unspoken promise. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few distant figures climbing into shiny sedans that didn't belong to people like me. I leaned against my battered hatchback, fighting the urge to scream. Jessica found me before I could gather my thoughts. She came out, coat draped over her arm, looking like she hadn't taken a full breath since Kingsley's interruption. Celeste, she said, her voice soft but insistent. Don't drive off yet. Why not? I shot back, sharper than I intended. So HR can drag me into another interrogation room? She flinched but didn't back away. Look, I didn't know Kingsley would do that tonight. He's under pressure from the board. This leak, it's real, Celeste. Someone is selling stories about your father's department. I ran a hand through my hair. So you think I know who it is? No. Her eyes flicked around the lot, as if she expected someone to appear out of the shadows. But I think you're smart enough to figure it out. You have contacts, you know how to dig. We can keep your name clear, but only if you help us. So what? I'm your inside spy now? Jessica set her coat on the hood of my car and leaned in closer. You care about him, don't you? About your dad? My chest tightened. Of course I do. Then help me, she said, because Kingsley wants a scapegoat. And you're the easiest target. We stood there under the harsh parking lot lights, two silhouettes bound by secrets neither of us asked for. Finally, I exhaled. Fine. Where do I start? She pulled out a small USB drive from her pocket. This is everything we've got. IP addresses, timestamps, flagged communications. You'll see how they used your name. Maybe you'll recognize something we don't. I took it. The cold plastic tiny in my hand, yet somehow heavier than any suitcase I'd ever dragged through an airport. What happens if I find something? Bring it straight to me, Jessica said. Not Kingsley, not anyone else. Me. Her voice shook on that last word. It hit me then. She wasn't just worried about the company or Dad's reputation, she was afraid for herself. There were layers to this I couldn't yet see. Okay, I said. I'll look tonight. Dot. Thank you. She squeezed my hand. And Celeste? Be careful. Whoever's behind this, they know how to cover their tracks. Dot dot. I didn't sleep. I drove home with the USB in my pocket, my car rattling like a bag of bones. My tiny studio flat felt like a shoebox when I stepped inside, the walls pressing closer with every hour I spent hunched over my laptop. The files were a mess: emails, server logs, partial IP trails, random encrypted snippets. Whoever had framed me knew what they were doing. I recognized a few of the fake accounts, old pen names I'd abandoned years ago, long before I started my human interest work. That cut deeper than I expected. It meant someone had done their homework. By sunrise, my eyes were red, the screen a blur of code and dead ends. One thing stuck out, though, a single trail that didn't fit. An email sent to my blog's anonymous submission form. Its IP was local, not rerouted through some offshore VPN. The name attached to it was nonsense, Sunnyday84. But the writing style? It was familiar. Too familiar. I closed my eyes, dredging up memories. The clipped phrasing. The way they dropped articles, rushed sentences, but obsessed over detail. I'd read that style before, in college. My mind snagged on a face. Russell Hargrove, my ex from journalism school. We'd run the student paper together until he jumped ship for corporate PR. I hadn't spoken to him in years. My hands shook as I searched his name. LinkedIn, still at the same PR firm that handled crisis management for companies like Dad's. I felt sick. I called Jessica before the doubt could drown me. She answered on the first ring. I think I know who's behind this, I blurted out. Talk. I laid it all out. The submission, the style, Russell's connections. She was silent for a beat. Do you have proof it's him? Not yet. But I can get it. Celeste, listen to me. If he's tied to this, you need to be careful. Don't confront him alone. He'll know how to twist this around. But I was already moving. I have to see him, if I can get him to admit anything. Wait, she started, but I hung up. I threw on a jacket, stuffed my laptop and the USB into my bag, and slammed the door behind me. I had no idea what I'd say when I found him. But I knew this. If Russell thought he could ruin my father's legacy and pin it on me, he didn't know me at all. I drove into the morning rush, my pulse a steady drumbeat in my ears, the city blurring past my windows like a storm I decided to run straight into. And somewhere deep down I felt it. The real fight was only just beginning. Russell's office sat on the 15th floor of a glass box that overlooked the city like an indifferent king. By the time I parked my hatchback in the visitor's lot, my hands were trembling so badly I had to sit for a minute, forehead pressed to the wheel. I could already picture his smug grin, the way he'd spin this to make me look like the paranoid ex who never moved on. But I had no choice. If I didn't dig up what I needed, Kingsley would bury me to protect the company, and Dad's name would sink with mine. I pushed through the revolving doors into the building's lobby, my boots echoing across the marble floor. The receptionist barely glanced up when I asked for Russell. Do you have an appointment? She asked, her tone robotic. Tell him it's Celeste Marlowe, I said. He'll see me. She tapped her headset, her eyes flicking to me with mild curiosity. Mr. Hargrove, there's a Celeste Marlowe here for you. A pause, a small frown. Yes, sir, right away. She gestured toward the elevators. He'll see you on 15. The ride up felt like an ascent into a storm cloud. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked pale, haunted. I wondered if Russell would see that weakness and pounce. But then I pictured Dad's face at that retirement party, so proud, so blind to the truth, and the fear hardened into something sharper. Russell's office was bigger than my entire flat. He stood behind a wide glass desk, arms folded, hair slicked back in that corporate shark style that made him look older than 35. When he saw me, his lips curled into a lazy grin. Celeste. Wow, it's been what, 5 years? To what do I owe this pleasure? Don't play dumb, I said, shutting the door behind me. You know why I'm here. He raised an eyebrow. Do I? I tossed the USB drive onto his desk. Recognize that? You've been feeding leaks through fake accounts, using my byline. I want to know why. He laughed, actually laughed. Always straight to the drama with you. I didn't hack your precious blog, Celeste. Maybe someone used my name too. I stepped closer, my hands braced on the edge of his desk. Your writing style is all over those posts. You think I don't remember how you clipped your sentences? How you obsessed over insider dirt? His grin faded, replaced by a cold, calculating mask. So what if I did? You've always been so gullible, Celeste. You think your father's some kind of saint? You think that company is clean? I did him a favor. I showed people what goes on behind those glass walls. A favor? My voice cracked. You put him under investigation. You nearly ruined me. He sat down, spinning his chair to face the skyline. You don't get it. This isn't about you. It never was. Richard Marlowe is a relic, Celeste. He's sitting on secrets that would sink that entire division if they got out. What secrets? Russell shrugged. Ask him yourself. He was my source. The world seemed to tilt. You're lying. Am I? He flicked his gaze back to me, eyes glinting. Did you ever wonder why he never retired before now? Why HR's so desperate to keep him squeaky clean? He's part of it. Always has been. I wanted to scream at him, to call him a liar, but the words died in my throat. Somewhere inside me a voice whispered, what if he's right? What if Dad isn't who I've always believed he was? Russell leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. Walk away, Celeste. Take the offer from Jessica. Write their nice little newsletters, stay quiet. Or dig deeper and watch your father's reputation burn. Your choice. I grabbed the USB, fingers trembling. If you're bluffing, I'll find out. He only smiled. Good luck with that. ... Back in my car, I slammed the door so hard the window rattled. The city around me felt suddenly hostile. Every street lamp, an interrogation light. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over Dad's number. I wanted to call him to demand the truth. But instead, I called Jessica. He says Dad was his source, I said when she picked up. Is that even possible? She didn't answer right away. When she spoke, her voice was brittle. There have always been rumors. Nothing proven. But if Russell's telling the truth, then what? Then you need proof, Celeste. Real proof. If your father was involved, we can't protect him. But if he wasn't, then Russell's bluffing and I can take him down. Exactly. I gripped the wheel. How? Come in tonight. We'll pull everything. Dad's old files, archived emails, expense reports. If there's dirt, it'll be buried deep. I'm on my way. I ended the call, the city lights blurring through my windshield. Betrayal had never been just a word for me. It was a door I'd never wanted to open, especially not when my father stood on the other side. But tonight there would be no more illusions. I'd find the truth, whatever it cost me. The city never really sleeps, at least not when you're driving toward its underbelly at 2 in the morning with your whole life balanced on the edge of a secret. By the time I reached the corporate headquarters, the skyline had vanished behind a veil of misty rain. The parking garage felt like an echo chamber for my doubts. My father's secrets, Russell's smirk, Jessica's brittle voice telling me there were rumors. The truth was either about to set me free or bury me next to Dad's legacy. Security at the front desk barely looked up when Jessica met me in the lobby, swiping me through with a flick of her badge. She looked exhausted, her blouse rumpled, her hair pulled back with the kind of haste that said she hadn't left the building in hours. You came, she said, as if she hadn't really believed I would. You said you'd show me everything, I said. I'm holding you to that. She led me through the maze of empty cubicles, past frosted glass offices with darkened lights. The hush of the night floor felt heavy, like the building itself was holding its breath. She stopped at a small meeting room where a single laptop sat open on the table, its glow the only light in the room. This is everything we pulled, she said. Old emails, scanned contracts, expense reports. If there's a paper trail, it's in here. She paused, searching my face. Are you ready for this? No, I said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. For the next hour we sat shoulder to shoulder, the glow of the screen illuminating the wreckage of decades. Dad's name popped up in contract approvals, budget reallocations, consulting agreements that didn't make sense. Some signatures looked real, some felt off. My throat tightened every time I saw his neat familiar scrawl next to figures that whispered fraud. This one, Jessica said, tapping an email chain. Look at the dates. This was the same week your blog got that anonymous leak. I scanned the lines, my mind spinning. Who's this sender? T. Smith? Could be a shell account. But if we trace the IP, I clicked through the logs. The IP matched the same block of addresses Russell used. My breath caught. So he spoofed this too? Or he had help from someone inside? Or, Jessica said gently, he really did get it from your father. I wanted to slam the laptop shut, to throw it across the room. Instead, I scrolled deeper. My eyes caught on an attachment, an invoice for consulting services. Paid out of a discretionary budget that didn't need board approval. It was signed by Dad. But the signature, it was crooked. The date typed over the line, off-center. Sloppy, like someone wanted it to look real, but didn't care enough to get the details right. Forgery, I breathed. It has to be. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Can you prove that? I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. Dad keeps originals of everything, old habit from before they digitized records. If that signature's forged, the real paper is probably locked in his home office. Jessica hesitated. That's risky, Celeste. If Kingsley finds out you're poking around, then he'll know I'm serious, I snapped. I'm not letting Russell win. She leaned in, her voice low. Be smart about this. Don't go in guns blazing. If your father's innocent, you need more than just a gut feeling. I know, I said, but this is my chance to clear his name. And mine. She squeezed my shoulder. Then go. And Celeste, if you need backup, call me first. The rain had turned into a fine drizzle by the time I pulled into my parents' driveway. The house loomed large and silent, its windows dark except for the faint glow coming from Dad's office upstairs. I stared up at it, my pulse a low roar in my ears. I let myself in with the old spare key under the flower pot. Some family traditions never die. The hallway creaked under my steps, the framed photos on the wall catching the faint streetlight through the curtains. There was Dad, in every phase of life. Young recruit, new husband, proud father, corporate king. I wondered which version of him was waiting for me at the top of the stairs. I climbed carefully, skipping the step that always squeaked. The door to his office was ajar. Inside, the lamp cast a warm pool of light over papers, stacked in neat towers, trophies of a life measured by precision and order. He was there, Dad, Richard Marlowe. He sat at his desk in a robe, his reading glasses perched low on his nose as he scribbled notes onto a yellow legal pad. He didn't hear me until I knocked lightly on the doorframe. Celeste, he said, surprise flickering across his tired face. What are you doing here? It's the middle of the night. I stepped in, my heart a stone in my chest. I need to ask you something, and I need the truth, Dad. He set the pen down slowly. Of course. Sit down. I stayed standing. Did you leak company information to Russell Hargrove? Did you sign off on fake consulting invoices? His eyes widened, shock etched in every line. What? No, why would you? I need to see your old files, I said, my voice shaking. The originals. If your signature's been forged, they'll prove it. He looked at me, searching my face like he was trying to read a foreign language. Celeste, what's going on? Someone's framing you, framing me. If we don't stop it, they'll tear everything down, everything you worked for. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then, without a word, Dad rose and crossed to the tall filing cabinet in the corner. His hands trembled as he unlocked the top drawer and pulled out a battered red folder. This is my original ledger, he said, his voice rough. Every contract I ever signed, every expense. He handed it to me like he was giving me his last piece of armor. I flipped through it, page after page of neat signatures, each one crisp, unmistakable. Then I found it, the consulting invoice. The date matched. The signature did not. The real one was missing. I looked up at him. Dad, this is it. They forged your name. His shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him all at once. Who would do that? Russell, I said. But he didn't do it alone. Dad sank back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. My God, Celeste. I touched his arm. The anger and relief tangling in my chest. We'll fix this. I promise. Outside, the rain beat harder against the window. The truth wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a storm we'd have to survive. Together, this story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. I barely slept that night. Dad dozed off in his office chair, his hand still resting on the red folder as if he feared it might disappear if he let go. I sat across from him, the rain drumming a steady tattoo on the window, the forged invoice spread out before me like a confession waiting for its judge. At dawn, I made strong coffee and forced Dad to drink it. His eyes were bloodshot, the lines around his mouth deeper than I'd ever seen them. "Celeste," he rasped, "I don't know how this happened. I thought I knew everyone who touched my accounts." "You didn't," I said, fighting the exhaustion gnawing at the edges of my mind. "Someone on the inside helped Russell. They had access to your old records. That means they're close. Maybe even HR. Dad flinched at that. I hated seeing him like this, fragile, undone. I'd grown up believing he was bulletproof. Now he looked like a man who'd taken every hit and was still standing by sheer will alone. I tucked the real documents into my bag. "We're going to the office," I said. "Jessica needs to see this." He reached for my hand. "Be careful, Celeste. Kingsley isn't going to let this slide." I squeezed his fingers. "I'm not afraid of him." We drove downtown in silence, the city waking up around us like a slow beast stretching its limbs. When we pulled into the company lot, Dad's ID badge still worked at the gate. That gave me a bitter sort of hope. Maybe Kingsley hadn't figured out what we knew yet. Jessica met us at reception, her face tight with worry when she saw the battered red folder under my arm. "You found it," she breathed. "Good. Come with me." She led us to a secure conference room near her HR wing. A glass box with a frosted door, so modern and see-through, yet so easy to hide secrets behind closed panels. She gestured for us to sit. "Kingsley's already in," she said. "He's holding a damage control meeting with the board. He knows something's wrong, but he doesn't have what we have." I spread the folder out on the table. Jessica scanned the signatures, flipping the forged contract against the real one. "This is gold," she said. "If we prove this was altered, Russell and whoever he paid off are done." Dad cleared his throat, his voice rusty. "What happens to my pension? My reputation?" Jessica glanced at me, then back at him. "If we play this right, you'll retire clean. Kingsley will spin it to the board that you were the victim, not the cause. The company can't afford a scandal right now." "And Russell?" I asked. Her eyes went cold. "We corner him. If he knows we can prove forgery, he'll either turn on his accomplice or try to vanish." I leaned back, adrenaline mixing with dread. "So how do we push him?" Jessica hesitated. "We leak the fact that we're going public with the originals. Make him panic. He'll either try to cover his tracks or cut a deal." Dad rubbed his temples. "Celeste shouldn't be involved in this." "I'm already involved," I snapped. "This is my name too. If Russell dragged me in, I'm dragging him down." Jessica nodded, her expression hardening. "I'll call him. Arrange a meeting, somewhere neutral. We'll record everything." I checked my watch. "Do it now." She stepped out into the hall, her voice low, and clipped through the glass. Dad and I sat there in the silence that grew heavy as the sun rose higher through the frosted windows. A few minutes later, she slipped back in. "He agreed to meet. He wants to clear the air. He picked a cafe across town, public enough that he won't pull anything stupid." "When?" I asked. 2 hours. I stared at my reflection in the glass walls. This was it. The moment that could crack Russell's perfect facade. I wondered if he'd come alone, or if whoever had been pulling his strings would show up too. Dad leaned forward, his eyes fierce again despite the dark circles beneath them. "You're not going without backup." "I know," I said. "Jessica's coming with me, and we'll wear wires." She nodded, pulling a small black pouch from her bag. "I had these ready, just in case." I stood up, my knees stiff. If Russell wants to play games, he's about to find out. I don't fold as easily as he thinks. Jessica gripped my shoulder. "Stay calm, let him talk himself into a corner, we'll do the rest." Dad looked at me like he was seeing someone he didn't fully recognize, a daughter who wasn't just the family disappointment, but the one who might save him from drowning in his own past. I didn't know if I was ready for this, but I knew one thing, I wasn't turning back now. I met Jessica's eyes, my voice steady. "Let's go get our confession." 2 hours felt like an eternity. I paced the cramped break room while Jessica made calls, her voice clipped and businesslike, arranging a legal observer just in case Russell decided to twist the narrative. Dad stayed behind at the office with the promise he wouldn't try to follow us. I didn't trust him to keep that promise, but I couldn't afford to worry about him now. The cafe Russell chose sat on the edge of the financial district, a sleek, sterile chain spot where everything smelled faintly of burnt espresso and artificial vanilla. Too public for violence, too quiet for comfort. Jessica and I arrived 10 minutes early, slipping into a booth near the back where we could see the door and each other's faces in the window reflection. She checked the tiny recording device clipped to the inside of my blazer. "Test," she whispered. "Testing?" I murmured. The little green light blinked twice. "Liv, stay calm," she said. "Let him talk. If you push too soon, he'll clam up." "Got it." I didn't mention how my palms were already damp. My stomach, a knot of acid and adrenaline. At exactly 11 o'clock, Russell strolled in like a man who owned the world. No briefcase, no entourage, just his perfect haircut and that infuriating grin. He spotted me, raised his hand in mock greeting and ordered a black coffee at the counter before sliding into the booth across from me. "Celeste, you look intense," he said, voice dripping with smugness. "Jessica, didn't expect you." "I'm here to make sure you don't lie your way out of this," she said flatly. Russell chuckled, wrapping his hands around his paper cup like he was posing for a stock photo. "So dramatic. What exactly am I being accused of today?" I pulled the forged invoice from my bag and slid it across the table. "This, and every other piece of garbage you funneled through my name." He didn't even glance at it. "I'm not sure what you think this proves." "It proves you forged my father's signature and framed me to cover your tracks," I snapped. He leaned back, eyes flicking around the cafe, voice dropping just above a whisper. "You have no idea how deep this goes, Celeste. You think this is about me and some cheap forgery. You're scratching at the surface of something that's been buried for decades." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Who's behind you?" He laughed softly. "Do you really think I'd hand that over? You should thank me, Celeste. If you'd stayed quiet, you could have walked away with the sweet contract and your father's pension intact." "You think I care about that now?" I said. "You dragged my name through the mud. You put my father in the crosshairs." Russell's grin slipped. "Your father isn't innocent? You want to believe he's a hero? Go ahead. But don't come crying to me when you find out what he signed off on all those years ago." Jessica leaned in. "So it's blackmail? You're holding old dirt over his head?" "Call it insurance." He sipped his coffee like we were talking about the weather. "Your precious HR director, Kingsley, he's in it up to his neck. He needed a patsy. You were perfect." The rage bubbled up so fast I nearly stood. Jessica's hand shot out, pressing my knee under the table. A silent warning. "Don't break." "Tell me how much they paid you," I hissed. Russell tapped the cup lid, his smile thin. "More than your father's pension, that's for sure." "And the leak? The blog posts? Collateral damage. It keeps the sharks distracted while the real money moves. I never expected you to trace it back this far. Credit where it's due, Celeste." He leaned closer, his voice so low I had to strain to hear. "Walk away. Take the deal Jessica offered. Do the newsletters, travel, write your sweet human interest crap. If you don't, I guarantee you'll regret it." My hands clenched. "I'm not walking away." Jessica's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, eyes widening just a fraction before she schooled her face. "Excuse me," she said, rising smoothly. "I'll be right outside." My pulse spiked as Russell's eyes flicked to her retreating back. "Looks like your babysitter's gone. You really want to do this alone, Celeste?" "I'm not alone," I said. "We have your confession." His laugh cracked like ice. "You think you're safe? You think that recording matters? Kingsley owns the people who'll decide what's real. By tomorrow, you'll be the unstable daughter trying to cash in on Daddy's retirement." He reached across the table, his hand landing on mine like a viper's head. "Don't push me, Celeste." I pulled my hand free, ignoring the tremor in my wrist. "Go to hell, Russell." His grin returned. Shark's teeth this time. Ladies first. The door behind me swung open so hard it rattled the glass. Jessica strode back in, eyes blazing. "We're done here." Russell stood, smoothing his tie like he'd just won a game, only he understood. "See you in the headlines, Celeste." He sauntered out, leaving behind the ghost of burnt coffee and betrayal. Jessica yanked me to my feet. "Come on, We need to get you somewhere safe. He admitted enough, I said, my voice shaking as we stepped into the cold daylight. It's over for him. It's not over, she said grimly. Not even close. He's just the bait. Whoever's behind him knows you're getting too close. So what do we do now? Jessica squeezed my shoulder, her eyes flinty with resolve. We fight dirtier. And Celeste? Yeah? She glanced over her shoulder at the cafe door, then back at me. You're not the family disappointment anymore. You're the only reason your father still has a chance. Somewhere deep inside me, a spark caught. Let them come. I was ready for all of it. And this time, they'd see what I was really capable of. The cafe Russell chose sat on the edge of the financial district, a sleek, sterile chain spot where everything smelled faintly of burnt espresso and artificial vanilla. Too public for violence, too quiet for comfort. Jessica and I arrived 10 minutes early, slipping into a booth near the back where we could see the door and each other's faces in the window reflection. She checked the tiny recording device clipped to the inside of my blazer. Test, she whispered. Testing, I murmured. The little green light blinked twice. Liv, stay calm, she said. Let him talk. If you push too soon, he'll clam up. Got it. I didn't mention how my palms were already damp. My stomach, a knot of acid and adrenaline. At exactly 11 o'clock, Russell strolled in, like a man who owned the world. No briefcase, no entourage, just his perfect haircut and that infuriating grin. He spotted me, raised his hand in mock greeting, and ordered a black coffee at the counter before sliding into the booth across from me. Celeste, you look intense, he said, voice dripping with smugness. Jessica, didn't expect you. I'm here to make sure you don't lie your way out of this, she said flatly. Russell chuckled, wrapping his hands around his paper cup, like he was posing for a stock photo. So dramatic. What exactly am I being accused of today? I pulled the forged invoice from my bag and slid it across the table. This? And every other piece of garbage you funneled through my name. He didn't even glance at it. I'm not sure what you think this proves. It proves you forged my father's signature and framed me to cover your tracks, I snapped. He leaned back, eyes flicking around the cafe, voice dropping just above a whisper. You have no idea how deep this goes, Celeste. You think this is about me and some cheap forgery? You're scratching at the surface of something that's been buried for decades. Jessica's jaw tightened. Who's behind you? He laughed softly. Do you really think I'd hand that over? You should thank me, Celeste. If you'd stayed quiet, you could have walked away with a sweet contract and your father's pension intact. Jessica drove us straight to her apartment, a tiny top-floor unit overlooking a side street near the university. She insisted it was safer than my flat or my parents' house. Safer from what I didn't dare ask out loud. But the tension that clung to her shoulders told me we were past the point of polite illusions. This wasn't just about forged signatures or office politics anymore. Someone powerful was pulling strings behind Russell, and I'd just stepped into their spotlight. We locked the door behind us and bolted it for good measure. Jessica flicked on a cheap desk lamp, its glow casting the clutter of her living room into harsh relief, papers, binders, a laptop half buried under a blanket. She dropped her bag, paced the carpet, and spun to face me. We have the recording, she said, voice low but urgent. But it's not enough. Kingsley will spin this so fast, you'll be lucky if you're not in cuffs tomorrow. So what do we do? I asked, my pulse still hammering from the cafe showdown. She ran a hand through her hair, thinking, we leak it, not to your blog, somewhere bigger, national outlets, somewhere Russell can't bury it overnight. And my dad? The words came out raw. If they come after him, they will, she said, cutting me off, which is why we get ahead of them. We show the real documents, the forged signatures. We put it all out there, Celeste. Full transparency. The board will scramble to contain the fallout, but once it's public, they can't pin it on you or your father. I sank onto the couch, the room spinning around me. We are blowing up his retirement, his whole life. Jessica crouched down so we were eye to eye. You're saving him from becoming the scapegoat for something he never did. That company was going to gut him to protect themselves. You're giving him a fighting chance. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it, her eyes going wide. They know. What? She flipped the screen to me, a short, cold text from an unknown number. Back off. I swallowed hard. Russell? No, he's just a mouthpiece. This is Kingsley, or whoever's behind him. She stood, pacing again. We need to move now. We'll take the files to a reporter I trust. There's a guy at the Tribune, did an expose on corporate tax fraud last year. If anyone will run with this, he will. I stood too, adrenaline overriding my fear. When? She grabbed her bag. Tonight, before they spin the narrative. ... It felt surreal. Packing up my father's legacy, a few folders and a USB drive that held everything that could either clear his name or destroy it forever. Jessica called her reporter while we drove, her voice clipped and urgent, the streetlights painting streaks across the windshield. I watched the city roll past, every building suddenly suspect, every passing car, a potential tail. When we pulled up outside the Tribune's offices, my phone buzzed. A blocked number. My gut twisted. I answered. Hello? A hiss of static. Then Kingsley's voice, calm and poisonous. Celeste, I'd hoped you'd be smarter. I glanced at Jessica, who was already watching me, her eyes narrowed. You've got nothing, I said, my voice shaking only a little. We have proof. We have Russell's confession. You have scraps, he said smoothly. And if you push this, you'll burn with him. Think about your father, about your future. Walk away. I clenched the phone so hard, my knuckles cracked. You made me the family disappointment, Kingsley. I'm done playing that part. Then you'd better be ready for what happens next, he said, and the line went dead. I stared at my phone, every nerve in my body on edge. Jessica grabbed my arm. We're going. Now. We slipped inside the Tribune building through a side entrance. Her contact, Mark Devereaux, met us in a dim lobby, all rumpled shirt and under-eye bags, the look of a man who lived for stories that could ruin powerful people. Jessica, he said, glancing at me, this is the Marlowe girl. She's the one who got us this far, Jessica snapped. We need you to listen, and listen fast. In a back office that smelled like stale coffee and ink, we laid it all out. Russell's confession, the forged signatures, the timeline that connected every dirty contract to the people pulling the strings. Mark's eyes flicked over the evidence, his pen tapping the side of his notebook. You know they'll sue you into the ground, he said finally. They'll try to ruin you. They already tried, I said. Now it's my turn. Mark leaned back, his expression unreadable. Then he cracked a grin that made him look 10 years younger. I like you, kid. Let's blow this wide open. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Jessica squeezed my shoulder, her eyes soft for the first time since this nightmare began. By the time we left the Tribune's side door, dawn was crawling over the city like a cautious cat. I should have felt relief, some flicker of victory, but the weight of what we'd done pressed down on me harder than before. The files, the recordings, Russell's slippery smirk, I saw them all every time I blinked. Jessica drove us back to her apartment instead of my parents' house. Too risky, she said. If Kingsley's got eyes on you, they'll be watching your father too. So we huddled in her living room, watching Mark's story hit the Tribune's online front page like a match dropped in gasoline. It spread fast, faster than I expected. Within an hour, national outlets were picking it up. Corporate scandal rocks, major firm retirement party lies exposed. My father's name trended on social media. They called him a victim, a hero, a fool. Every angle people could spin, they did. Dad called me once, voice cracking through the line. Did you do this, Celeste? I told him yes, that we'd fight it, that we'd win. He went quiet after that. I didn't blame him. Gee, she-9. Jessica paced the apartment, phone glued to her ear, coordinating statements with the Tribune's legal team. We have to get ahead of Kingsley's spin machine, she told me between calls. If they can't discredit the facts, they'll go after you. Your past, your finances, anything. Let them, I said, though my hands shook when I typed out my own statement for my blog, one final post where I told my side, raw and unfiltered. I titled it, The Party They Tried to Bury Me At. It wasn't an expose, it was a confession. I told them what it was like to be the disappointment, the black sheep, the daughter whose name was always whispered with a tinge of pity, and how in the end, I traded that shame for a truth they couldn't erase. I hit publish and waited. Minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Celeste Marlowe. Kingsley's voice drawled, calm as ever. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. You're done, I shot back. The Tribune has everything. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You think they care about your father? About you? They'll move on when the next scandal breaks. But you? You're radioactive now. Good luck getting hired anywhere. I'll survive, I snapped. But the words felt paper thin. You think this is survival? He hissed. You're alone, Celeste. Jessica can't protect you. Your father is yesterday's news. And you? I cut him off. Try me. He hung up. The silence that followed felt like 1,000 pounds pressing on my chest. Jessica sat beside me on the couch, eyes sharp and unwavering. He's rattled. That means he's sloppy. We push now. How? Russell, she said. We flip him. He's panicking too. He never signed up to be the fall guy. If Kingsley thinks he'll stay loyal, he's wrong. She grabbed her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. He's already called me 3 times. Wants a deal. Immunity, maybe. You trust him? Not for a second. But his panic is leverage. He'll give us names. I leaned back, exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. This is bigger than Dad's retirement. Bigger than me. Yeah, Jessica said, eyes flicking up to mine. But you started it. And now you finish it. I laughed, a sound that tasted like salt and regret. You think I'm some hero, Jessica? She shook her head. No. I think you're the first person who didn't run. That makes you dangerous. I turned to the window. The sun had broken through the clouds, casting the city in a harsh, honest light. For once I welcomed it. My phone buzzed again. A new message, no name, just a grainy photo of my parents' house. The text below it, last warning. I showed it to Jessica. She didn't flinch. They're trying to scare you off. Don't let them. What if they hurt him? Then they cross a line they can't come back from. She put a hand on my shoulder. You ready to make them wish they never called you a disappointment? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Outside the city was awake now. And so was I. And I wasn't backing down. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, not when the photo of my parents' house kept flashing in my mind like a lit fuse. Jessica forced me to eat something, dry toast and black coffee, but my stomach twisted around every bite. My father didn't call again. Part of me hated him for not demanding answers. Another part hoped he was staying quiet because he trusted me to fix what he couldn't. By late afternoon, Jessica's living room felt like a war room. The TV droned with talking heads dissecting our story, arguing over whether Dad was a patsy or a player. My phone buzzed every few minutes with messages, some hateful, some supportive, most from people who loved the thrill of a scandal that wasn't theirs. Jessica's laptop pinged. She checked the email, her eyes narrowing. Russell wants to meet. Says he has names, dates, bank transfers. He wants immunity in writing before he gives them up. Do we trust him? I asked, pacing. She rubbed her temples. No, but if he gives us documentation, the Tribune can fact-check it. If it lines up, Kingsley's done. What's his leverage? I demanded. He's the one who forged Dad's signature. Why does he think he gets to walk? Because, Jessica said grimly, he's the link that ties Kingsley to the offshore accounts. He can prove who gave the orders. He's dirty, but he's not the worst. I bristled. He tried to ruin my life. And now he's desperate. She shot back. Use it. She clicked her phone's screen on, showing me the Tribune's live feed. Mark Devereaux was on camera, calm as ever, laying out the facts we'd given him. Each detail was a nail in Kingsley's coffin, assuming we could hold the hammer long enough to drive it in. Jessica looked up. We meet Russell tonight. Neutral ground again, somewhere public. I scoffed. Public didn't stop them from threatening my family. Which is why we'll bring eyes with us, she said. Reporters, hidden cameras, the works. If he talks, it goes live. He knows that. And if Kingsley shows up? Jessica's smile was cold. Then we catch him too. ... The diner Russell chose was cheap and forgettable, a place off the highway where truckers refilled coffee cups until dawn. Jessica and I sat in a corner booth, 2 tiny cameras hidden under the napkin dispenser and salt shaker. Mark waited 2 booths behind us, tapping his phone as if he was just another tired commuter. Russell slipped in 20 minutes late, sunglasses on despite the overhead fluorescence. He looked terrible, like a man who hadn't slept since the scandal broke. His eyes darted around before he slid into the booth. Relax, I snapped. We're the ones who should be scared. You think I'm not scared? He hissed. Kingsley's not bluffing, Celeste. He has people. You think that photo of your dad's house was a prank? I fought to keep my voice steady. Give us the names, Russell. The accounts. Everything. Jessica leaned forward. Talk, now. He glanced at her, then back at me. He used offshore shells, Luxembourg, Malta, the Caymans. He funneled hush money to insiders who kept signing off on cooked contracts. Your father was never in on it. Kingsley made sure to keep him isolated, so he could be the face they propped up while they siphoned millions. Proof, I said. Not words. Russell pulled a flash drive from his pocket, pushing it across the table. Bank records, wire logs, and a recording. One of Kingsley losing his temper when I asked for more money. Jessica snatched it up, slipping it into her purse. You're coming with us. Witness protection if you want any deal. He shook his head, sweat beading at his hairline. I'm not going anywhere near the feds. You think they'll keep me safe? Kingsley's tied into people way above this company. Then why help us? I asked. What's in it for you? His smile was broken, sad. My own parachute. You expose him, I vanish. It's the only way I get out alive. The waitress appeared, refilling our coffee. She glanced at us, curiosity flickering in her tired eyes. Russell hunched deeper into his jacket. Jessica's phone vibrated once. She read the message, her expression going rigid. They're here. I stiffened. Who? She nodded toward the window. A black sedan idled at the curb, engine running. In the front seat, a silhouette. Big broad shoulders, a faint glow of a cigarette. Watching. Russell's hand shook around his coffee cup. It's Kingsley. Or someone he sent. Mark slipped out of his booth, moving toward the back exit. He gave me a small nod. He'd take the drive straight to the Tribune's newsroom, broadcast it if anything went sideways. Jessica leaned in, her voice a razor. This is it, Celeste. We walk out that door, they'll try to scare you again. Maybe worse. Are you still in? I didn't let myself think about the photo of my parents' house, the calls, the threats. I thought about the first time Dad called me his disappointment. How I'd let that word bury me for years. I'm done being scared, I said. Let them come. Russell laughed under his breath. Wild, a man on the edge. You're braver than I ever was. Jessica's eyes locked on mine, fierce. Then let's burn it all down. We stood together as the sedan door opened. A figure stepped out onto the cracked asphalt, the hum of the diner's neon sign buzzing overhead. I could feel the weight of every lie, every betrayal, pressing into my bones. But I was still standing. And I wasn't backing down now. We stood under the flickering neon of that greasy diner sign, the night air thick with gasoline and something darker. Fear maybe, or the last shred of my old life. Russell stayed behind, glued to the window like a frightened dog. He'd handed over his evidence, but courage wasn't something he'd packed in that slim jacket of his. I didn't pity him? Not really. He'd made his bed. Now he got to hide under it. The figure from the black sedan stepped into the streetlight, a man in an expensive coat, phone pressed to his ear, jaw clenched like he was chewing glass. Kingsley. He spotted us and ended his call with a flick of his wrist, his eyes locking on mine with a venomous calm. Celeste Marlowe, he called, his voice smooth as silk stretched over broken glass. Why am I not surprised? I didn't flinch. What's the matter, Kingsley? Didn't expect your golden boy to squeal? Jessica stepped forward, her shoulders squared. It's over, Robert. The Tribune's got everything. Offshore accounts, forged invoices, your pet puppet back there willing to talk. Kingsley's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it didn't feel like the edge of a knife. Do you really think this ends with a newspaper story? You think you can touch me? I don't need to touch you, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I just have to shine enough light that your shadows swallow you up. He laughed. You're your father's daughter, aren't you? Loyal to a fault. Pathetic. My jaw tightened. Say what you want. This time you don't get to write the ending. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the sweat at his hairline, the tremor in the fingers, tucked into his coat pocket. He was good at hiding it, but fear radiated off him like heat. Walk away, Celeste, he murmured, his voice dropping to something intimate, snake-coiled. Take the payout. Start over. Do you really think the world will thank you for this? You'll be blacklisted, unemployable. Your father will die a ruined man. My father was said steady, raised a disappointment. I'm about to prove how disappointing I can really be. A flicker of rage snapped through his mask, the first real crack I'd seen. Don't test me. Jessica moved between us, her words a steel blade. You're done, Kingsley. We have you, we have Russell, and we have backups. Even if you take us out tonight, this goes live at dawn. His eyes darted to the diner window, where Russell's outline was barely visible behind grimy glass. He shook his head, a bitter chuckle escaping his throat. That idiot. Jessica leaned in, her voice low but lethal. Your only move now is to negotiate with the board. Resign. Take the fall quietly. Because if you don't, every piece of this hits the regulators. The feds. No golden parachute, no offshore retirement. Kingsley's phone buzzed. He ignored it. His eyes met mine again, something wild flickering behind the eyes. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll be able to look my father in the eye. He stepped back, shoulders tightening. The threat was unspoken, but it dripped from every word he didn't say. He wasn't done. Not yet. He turned, flicked his cigarette onto the asphalt, and climbed into the black sedan. The door slammed shut like the snap of a bear trap. The car idled, then peeled away, taillights vanishing into the darkness. Jessica exhaled, her breath white in the cold. We did it. No, I said, the tremor gone from my hands at last. Not yet. Behind us, Russell stumbled out of the diner, eyes wide. What happens now? Jessica didn't look at him. You disappear. You testify when we call you, and if you even think about running your mouth. He lifted both hands. Hey, I'm done. I'm out. I stepped closer to him, my voice low enough that only he could hear it. If you ever come near my family again, they won't find your bones. He flinched. For the first time since this mess began, I saw it click behind his eyes. He believed me. We walked back to Jessica's car, the neon sign humming behind us like applause from ghosts I'd buried tonight. As she started the engine, I leaned my head back against the seat. You think the board will actually force him out? They don't have a choice, she said. By morning he'll be radioactive. They'll sacrifice him to save themselves. I closed my eyes, letting the hum of the road drown out the storm still raging inside me. Good. Let them watch him burn. The car slipped onto the highway, the city lights receding behind us. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the girl they whispered about at family parties. I felt like someone who'd found her voice and made them listen. And tomorrow they'd learn just how loud I could be. By dawn, my father's face was everywhere. News banners, push notifications, commentators droning on about the loyal VP caught in the crossfire of corporate rot. The Tribune's story triggered a tidal wave that even Kingsley's cronies couldn't contain. By the time we got back to Jessica's apartment, I was too tired to think, but too wired to sleep. We sat on her battered couch, the TV flickering with live coverage as if it were broadcasting a funeral we weren't invited to. Dad called at 7 a.m. His voice cracked, softer than I'd ever heard it. Celeste, he rasped. Is it over? I stared at the sunrise through Jessica's grimy window. Not yet. But it will be. He was quiet. I could almost see him in his office chair, the red folder locked back in the safe, all his meticulous order turned inside out. I'm proud of you, he said finally. I wish I'd said that more. You did what you knew how to do, I said. I did the rest. We didn't say goodbye. Some wounds don't need stitches. They need air to heal. Jessica crashed for a few hours, curled up in an old blanket on the floor. I stayed awake, pacing the room, answering a flood of calls from Mark, lawyers, old classmates pretending they'd always believed in me. The board moved faster than even Jessica predicted. By midday, Kingsley's resignation was on every feed. Personal reasons, family matters, a legacy overshadowed by allegations. I watched his press photo vanish from the company's website in real time. Russell's recordings were already on file with the regulators. Even he couldn't backpedal now. By afternoon, I slipped back to my father's house. I needed to see him, not as the vice president or the cautionary tale, but just my dad. He sat in his recliner, tie still on, eyes hollow but grateful. He reached for my hand. People will keep talking. Let them, I said. We know the truth. He smiled, a fragile thing but real. You saved us. I saved me, I said. I just took you with me. That night, I posted my final piece, not on the blog. This one went everywhere, shared by the Tribune, picked up by people who needed a story about someone fighting back when everyone expected her to fold. I didn't call it an expose. I called it what it was: how the family disappointment burned the lie to the ground. I read the comments until my eyes blurred, strangers cheering me on, others accusing me of betrayal, but none of that mattered. The ones who really needed it were the girls like me, the ones they wrote off at birthday parties and retirement banquets and family reunions. I told them what it felt like to stand in the room that was built to bury you and tear the walls down instead. In the days that followed, people tried to spin my story into something cleaner, shinier. They called me brave. Some called me reckless. But they all had to say my name, and this time not as the girl they pitied, not as the disappointment, just as Celeste Marlowe, the woman who made them look twice. When the dust settled, Jessica came by one last time. We stood on my father's porch, the early summer air thick with the promise of rain. "You're not staying, are you?" she asked. I shrugged. "Not here, not this town, maybe not even this country." She smiled. "Good, you'd burn out if you did." I laughed, soft and true. "You think they'll miss me?" "They'll never stop telling your story," she said. "Make sure you're the one who owns it." We hugged. Two co-conspirators who'd fought a war we didn't start, but damn sure finished. Before she left, she squeezed my hand, her voice low and fierce. "Remember, they can't call you what you don't answer to." So I didn't. I packed my bag that night: passport, my battered laptop, the folder of papers that once felt like the anchor of my shame. I locked the front door behind me without looking back. I didn't owe this house, this city, or any of their whispered disappointments a single thing. When I boarded the plane, I tucked my name into my pocket like a talisman. Not a burden, a badge. And somewhere between here and wherever I landed, I promised myself this: the next time they said my name, it would be because they wanted to know how I did it. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.